the Talent Development Programme. So hopefully you'll enjoy the day. It's not going to be, it shouldn't be too nerve-wracking. We're a nice bunch. We're just very much looking forward to understanding more about your business project, and then obviously understanding more on an individual basis your journey, where you started from, and where you've got to now, and where you're going to go to in the future as well in terms of your development. So I will hand over to you guys. So I don't know if you're all going to be coming up together or one at a time. Okay.
You're not for the future. It's your moment.
Oh, I thought it was on my own then for a second. Spread it out a bit. Hopefully I'm at camera shots, it'll be fine. No. Oh, this is a bit off kilter. I haven't practiced. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all well this morning. Yes, no, silence, calm, because you've all been looking, getting carried away already. As you can see, in front of you we have our handouts, so everyone's in depth in going for that. So we'll cover most of the overview of what you're looking at in front of you, but there is some further detail for future reference and then you can take away with you, so it's just a nice easy handout for you. Obviously, today we're here to talk about our TDP project for 2021, and as you can see, there's a few of us, some of us have introductions, should we say. So obviously, just from our viewpoint, there's a few of us you might have seen before, might not have spoken to, so I was just going to do a quick overview of the people that are actually here today. So Mayflex, we have Bex, Daisy, we have Adam, we have Tony, John, and Julia. Jodie. Keep it funny. It's all right, I missed Tony out twice this morning. And I will say this time, just as an in-house joke, that going forward, so I did say the glorious Brad from Ratico this morning, but Zane got deeply offended by this, so I'm going to say the glorious Zane this morning, followed by Brad, Ian, Tony, and myself, Oliver. So just as a... Oh, sorry, Nikki.
Sorry.
That's right. Interactive. Got to miss someone out from each team. It's fine. Don't worry. See, I might cock up enough. People won't notice what everyone else is like. So just set the bar quite low. It'll be fine. So moving on to the next slide, just as a quick overview for what we're going to cover today, we have our project objective statement, phase 1 and phase 2 recaps, engagement analysis, phase 3 recommendations, and also our teamwork review. And then finally, as a last comment from myself, is going to be the statement for the project, which is to build a social media strategy to increase engagement with existing and new customers for both Mayflex and Ratico. And with that, I'll pass over to Bex.
Thank you. So before we got started on the business project, we really wanted to understand what the role and purpose of social media was for Mayflex and Ratico, so within our industry. So we know that growing businesses, influencers, small startups, we know that they're prime examples of entities that use social media to drive revenue and growth. But actually, increasingly, social media is becoming more prevalent in the B2B industry as well. And so it's really important for Sonopar to keep up with this trend, to stay relevant. And so we're really excited that this was part of our business project. So for us, the role and purpose of social lay within these 4 pillars you can see on the screen. So sharing, learning, interaction, and marketing. We know that social is a brilliant platform for marketing our products and services and learning about and sharing our best practice and knowledge and demonstrating that we're an organisation that is like the top dog in the industry and knows our stuff. But it's also a great opportunity to learn. So learning about competitor activity and what other players in the industry are doing, what products they're promoting and things like that. But also to learn about what our customers think about us, so whether that's positive or negative comments. And that in turn gives us a great opportunity to interact more with our customers as well. So whether that's responding to those positive and negative comments, or whether it's reaching out to new customers and demonstrating that we're an organisation that cares. So if we can move on, John. So before we could kickstart our business project, we wanted to arm ourselves with a bit of information about how Mayflex and Ratico currently use social media and the kinds of audiences that they wanted to be reaching. So we went away for the first few weeks of the programme and did a bit of our own research. And then we reconvened on a weekly basis via Teams to discuss that information, put it all together so we could build a foundation for the project. We also promoted a survey out to customers, partners and staff, and this was more to visualise the habits of those customers and those staff members that actually engage with our social media, but also to try and understand the reasons why some of those people might not be currently engaging with us so that we could build a proper foundation for the project. We will be talking about those results of the survey throughout this presentation, but you've got the results in the handout that I referenced earlier. And so I mentioned earlier that competitor activity is a really important part of social media. And so we really wanted to take a look at our statistics against our key competitors over the last 6 months. So you can see in the column highlighted in red the engagement rate. So that's talking about likes, comments, shares, all sorts of things like that in proportion to the number of followers that companies have. And you can see that there's a great variation of the engagement rate and in turn the number of followers between these organisations. So that's why these ones are highlighted in blue. We've got Underwoods, Norvain and DVS, because they have similar numbers of followers to us, but they have considerably higher engagement rates. So if we take a look at DVS, for example, they've got an engagement rate of 127% compared to Retico's 59% and Mayflex's 13%. So we really wanted to take the opportunity in the research phase to try and understand the kind of content that they put out to the market and how regularly they do that as well, just so that we can sort of get that proper understanding and kind of formulate what we wanted to do as part of our pilot. So now I'm going to hand over to Nikki, who's going to discuss the LinkedIn results a little bit more in detail.
That's nice. So as Beck said, we did a survey that was put out on LinkedIn. It was available for anybody who's a customer, a supplier or an employee to fill in. We had 64 responses, which were spread across the different opcos, so tried to get as much of a variation as we could within there. From the results, we can see that, as we had kind of predicted, LinkedIn was the main network that people use for B2B. That is across the industry as well, so that didn't come unexpected to us. Second place was YouTube, which again we do use across both opcos for more of a platform for storing the videos rather than actually sharing things on there. And in third place was Twitter, which, as you can see, isn't particularly used as much. In terms of the areas that we would look at using and platforms that people would follow us on, the results were slightly different. So again, LinkedIn was the main platform by quite a long stretch, followed by YouTube, but then it was Facebook and Instagram before you get to Twitter. So that is across the industry as well. So Twitter is not really being used very much on a business-to-business platform. So that was things that we took into consideration. However, for the project, we decided to stick with LinkedIn as the platform that we use so that we can build on the presence within there. And in terms of the choices of what people would like to see, again, it's the kind of posts that we do use already. So products, staff updates, videos, how-to videos, so the kind of the technical team and demonstrations of what we can do were all used within there. Sorry. And the main ones being the new services and products available as being one of the main areas that people are using. And in terms of what format they would like to see things, a lot of scope was put on videos, so we know that that is something that we do use. Text and image being the second and third place results on that. So we like to use a different variety of media so that we can use that and reach as much to it, all kind of scope and employees as we can. So by using a variety, but by having consistent messages is a good option to use. Okay, so we'll hand over to phase 2, which is going to be started up by Adam.
Nikki, that information, is that in?
Should be all of that.
Yeah.
It's in the handout, it's also in the survey as well, so you've got the full survey, which is a bar
We'll
chart
send
there.
out the presentation to everyone at the end of the day anyway, so you've got it all for knowledge.
Should have got musical chair music. We missed this chat slides.
It's fine. They don't do it like interlude, like music, just that. Elevator music while you're walking. Sorry, mate.
So, thank you guys, really good. So we're going to touch on now phase 2, which was our pilot. So we're going to start with how phase 1 impacted our phase 2, before we get into a bit more of the detail of the pilot, before moving on to some of the results from the pilot, following by our recommendations as a team. So, yeah, as the picture says, social media is here to stay in all industries. I think we have to engage with it, we have to embrace it, and really use it as a tool for business. So if we start really with how phase 1, more as a whole rather than the detail of how it impacted phase 2. So as Nikki and Bex just touched on, and Ola, so we had our team research, which was the team conducting different types of research on how people interact with social media, both from a B2B and B2C business. And then we backed that up with our customer survey and colleagues also. So that was sent out on LinkedIn, results coming back. And so with the team research and the survey, we really combined those results and presented to our stakeholders, which then led to our final picture of how we wanted to work. So as a result of that, the three-pronged approach, this is what we ended up with. So we ended up with really what our platform is going to be, so how we plan to engage with people, the frequency of how we engage with people, and also the type of content that we plan to publish. So if we start with on the left, on the right, or left, so, we went with LinkedIn, primarily because we have quite a good platform with LinkedIn anyway. So it's a B2B mainly platform, and it's the most professional social media platform out there at the moment to use. So I think the research we touched on, as Nikki said, just did point to using maybe a different platform too, but we think at this point, without good feedback from our stakeholders, it's not something we want to touch. So bring us secondly to the frequency. Frequency is something we looked at quite a bit. What we looked at is with B2B businesses, it doesn't really matter when in the day you post. I think social media, phones, tablets, etc., they're all in our lives now every day. We're constantly on them. So as to when you post doesn't really matter, it's more the frequency. So we aim for at least twice a week, so that keeps our message going, keeps the engagement running, and it really just keeps the ball rolling. And lastly is the type of engagement. So again, as you saw in the results, and these are in your handouts, different people, and I think this applies to how we learn, how we view things, and everything in life. Different people react to different types of information differently. So some person might read something and then think, well, that's rubbish. Whereas someone might have a video and you can really take something from it. So what we plan to do is really embrace the three pillars of video, text, and imagery. But as I say, keep a consistent message across the three. So that does two things. One of which I've just touched on is allows us to interact with different types of audience, and then secondly, analyse the results of them and how to go forward and how best people engage with us. So I'll bring on to Julia, who's going to talk more about the actual pilot and some of the processes we do. Thank you.
So after our research and feedback from our stakeholders, we kickstarted our pilot to display consistency across all our channels. We went ahead with our serialised posts. We decided to go with Throwback Thursdays and Feel Good Fridays, where Throwback Thursdays generally focused on our products and the industry content, and Feel Good Fridays were mainly employee wellbeing and internal promotions information, such as new starters or any training courses that were completed, and generally anything that we've done within our business. There was a slight comparison between both posts across our channels, whereby we just tailored the information to Retico and Mayflex audiences. Here you can see an example of Mayflex's post as well, with the only difference being on one of our posts is Mayflex used a mental health logo and Retico used a people picture. From the two posts, we did see a bit more engagement in Retico's post with people picture, which was Dave.
Dave doesn't
Yeah, so Dave's picture did generate a bit more engagement.
Trying to get it off the screen as quick as possible.
Quick highlights from that.
He smiles from here to here, so I think so.
You're doing well so far.
That was the end of a beautiful career. Sorry.
That's all right. the engagement. So the between the posts from our serialised post in comparison to what was generally our older posts, and since we started uploading these, we did see a bit more of a drive in our engagement and interaction across both channels. I'll pass over to Bradley, who will obviously introduce more.
Yes, thank you very much, Julia. Thanks. I've got a couple of slides here. I'm going to take you through the data we've taken from our trial. I'm going to run through Rutico. Daisy's going to take you through Mayflex after me. I do appreciate it's a bit of a data-heavy slide. I am going to pick out the key points. We've got a graph on the next slide and a graph on the slide after. It is all in your handout as well to digest at your own pace. Just in case there's any confusion, views, this column is unique to video content, so that's why views doesn't have data next to everything. So the first thing I want to talk about is the average engagements per post. So we've had a look at the pre-trial average engagement per post, running about 35, and our trial average engagements per posts running about 71, so an increase of about double. Linking back to our original project objective to drive increased engagement, we have seen that, so it's really, really nice to see that. If we have a look at the number of engagements in the column next to each post, you can see that actually some of them have actually got over 100 engagements per post, so running quite high. So we like to see that.
Bradley, did you specifically set out with those posts to try and improve the engagement?
Yes, so as has sort of been touched on previously in the presentation, the idea behind this was to have a mix of content, multiple posts per week, and also sort of a different sort of market for posts. So Throwback Thursday generally focusing on the product, targeting customers, and then Friday, Feel Good Friday, targeting well-being, targeting both customers and colleagues.
So you were effectively driving the output of social media through this trial period, in terms of your thoughts on what their topics should be, or were you just saying, well, we'll harness this is what we're going to do anyway, we'll just do it in this the Thursday and Friday? Or
I think there was an element of ideas that we had, but also especially through our conversations with Zane and Bex in marketing, I think one of you said that generally Friday's a good day for a people post. It might even have come from you, Harriet. So we tried to do something around people on a Friday. We knew that Throwback Thursday was a social media trend anyway, so try to jump on top of that trend and do something product around that. The idea as well was to have sort of almost serialized posts, so that our followers knew that there would be something around well-being coming out every Friday, therefore engaging with us on a weekly basis, expecting that content to come out, and potentially attracting new followers as well, knowing that every Friday they'd have that well-being post.
We also looked at it from a personal point of view. So what do we want to see? So if we were the customer putting ourselves in their shoes, what do we want to see on social media? Do we want to see video content? Do we want to see product placement or mental health? So that as a team enabled us to pick the post that we wanted and the times really.
I mean, that's a great point actually, John. Our Feel Good Friday sort of came from our presentation training. Zane did a great presentation actually on well-being, 7 dimensions of well-being. Well, that suddenly sort of fleshed into an idea that, well, we can do 7 posts here around each dimension, talk about each of the dimensions of well-being as we go through the trial. So, okay, happy?
Yeah.
Let's answer the question. Moving on regardless. So just to talk about the engagement rate on the individual posts. So LinkedIn suggests that an average engagement per post is 0.35%. Anything above 2% is considered good, and that's come from LinkedIn. As you can see, we're actually hitting at least 2% on all of our posts. I will just highlight the Digital Studio down the bottom. It is running at 14%, even though the engagement number is low. The reason being this data is correct as of the end of March. Digital Studio post was the last post that went out, so it had a shorter window. We are aware this reminds us to be cautious of taking an individual data point and drawing too much from it. We have tried to take the overall picture and draw conclusions from that. Coming back to the overall average engagements per post, that's what we're really happy to see. Okay?
And in terms of the engagements, were you able to differentiate between internal engagement, staff, and customer engagement? And does that matter?
I don't suppose Zane, or you able to comment on that, Zane?
I can. With LinkedIn's reporting, it's hard to differentiate between who likes your post unless you manually go and check that data. But we do see that probably is a 50-50 split between customers and internal colleagues at the moment.
I guess just to add to that, Dave, we have got Ian coming up as well. He's actually going to talk about some of the new followers we've attracted to try and link back to that original project objective of, it mentioned customers. We've seen an increase in the follower base in terms of customers, and hopefully that will then, of course, lead through to future increased engagement because our follower base is larger. Okay?
Exactly. Just a comment. I mean, LinkedIn, and I suppose the same has been said about Facebook. You've got to be a little bit careful you don't become an echo chamber of your own voice, and actually the only people that are listening to you are the people that are in your immediate either company or the suppliers that you work with, and everybody's giving each other a slap on the back, and actually you're not doing anything more than just making noise to yourself, really. See, Facebook can be the same, and if people connect with people they want to hear the same things about. So
certainly, we could have gone into more detail, but we knew we had a lot to cover. Some of our Throwback Thursday posts, I can certainly remember, seeing customers not just liking it, but initialising conversations on those posts. I know through our conversation with Harriet, that's something we wanted to create, a bit of an ecosystem around our posts, where we've actually got customers commenting on the customer's comment, starting the conversation. So, looking at individual posts, I think we have got evidence of that happening, but not in sort of data format.
It's also ultimately around what you do with that data. So if someone's liked that post or they've commented on that post, it's also down to the individual then or that business to then follow up that with a phone call, with an email, and find out what their information is or what they took from that post. So it's all well doing these posts on LinkedIn or whatever other platform, but it's only as good as your follow-up afterwards.
And great point, it's just a string in the bow rather than the bow itself, social media. So we'll move on to the next slide then, where what we've got here is our average engagements per post, running at about 35, wasn't it? As our horizontal line across the graph. Just in visual format, you can see here we are achieving that average engagement per post on the majority of our posts. Okay? And moving on to the last slide, please. This is the new follower count, sort of week by week. We're seeing that as our trial went on, we're seeing an increase in follower count. Obviously, it starts at 0 because Christmas is a quiet week. What was quite interesting to us, I think our last post was around the 10th of March. We've seen a little bit of a tail off in the number of new followers. Again, got to be cautious about drawing too much from that. But it would perhaps suggest that our mix of content type, of our post type, ensuring we're getting more than one post out there a week, was attractive to new followers, and potentially returning to the norm, if we want to call it that, has been slightly less attractive to new followers. Okay, so I'll pass you over to Daisy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So now we're just going to go through the Mayflex post. It's going to be identical slides to what you've just seen, just obviously reflecting the data that's come from the Mayflex LinkedIn. As you can see, the Mayflex pre-trial average was 4.55, which was starting a lot lower than where Retico were. But as you can see, we've then increased that to about 19.28 over the trial itself. So it's an increase of about 400%. Which gives a really good indication that if you're sort of doing consistent posts and sort of having a clear message, obviously with the serialised posts, keeping that sort of linked throughout the weeks, that you really can sort of see a good increase in that rate. Looking at this table below, obviously again we've got the column with views for the two videos as Brad mentioned. And then a few key things to point out is if we look at the shares column, we've got two posts, so just this one here and here, with 4 shares, and then if you follow that across the engagement rate, it shows obviously that there is an increase with the shares. I mean, this is expected obviously because it's going to be appearing on more people's pages, but in hopes that I think if you're encouraging more people to share them, that actually it will then be seen on someone's page who maybe is connected with someone who maybe works with the company, but they've not heard of Mayflex before, and sort of get that link there. If we go to the next slide, please. Here again, it's that same graph we saw before, where we've got the red line across along the bottom near the bottom, with the average engagement, which was that 4.55. And on the whole, you can see for Mayflex that all the posts actually exceeded this average, which is really promising to see. And if we look, if you look at the ones that have the hashtag Feel Good Friday, you can see these ones actually did much better. Which, as we've already previously mentioned, we kind of had this suspicion that would be the case because they were more people-related posts. Just pointing out, just pointing out the one down the bottom of the career wellness. This was one that actually did have a picture of employees, and obviously has had the largest increase of about 8 times. And then then the middle one just here was a very product-heavy post with the Throwback Thursday, which we could sort of say it's maybe got a lower engagement purely because it may appeal to like a smaller niche of people, and I guess some people that have seen it may not actually be interested in those product posts itself. Next.
Just on the post, so all the posts are coming from either the Rutico or the Mayflex account.
Yeah.
And I apologise if you've done this later, but did you do any analysis on those same or similar posts going out from an individual or individuals in the business? I'm just thinking that back to that personal connection piece.
Yeah.
If, for instance, if Brad or you and all the people in your team were to share a post that was related to your technology vertical, and your connections would probably be more likely to be connected to you and have interest in that.
We didn't necessarily trial it as an individual posting, but we was very encouraged for people to then share that post. And I think we shared a few.
It's interesting you bring it up, Dave, because it wasn't a conscious thought, but subconsciously that is exactly what happened. I know Oliver's obviously on the PSS team as well. He was sharing posts relevant to himself. I certainly was doing. I saw some of my colleagues do that as well. So rather than post them on the individual account, we've tried to share them so that then we can have the data come back through to the original post so that we can, evaluate.
I think going forward, though, it's definitely a thought to take forward. I think with individual followers that we have over the companies, it attracts more, it's touching more people, reaching out to more people. So it's something to look at going forward, definitely.
Yeah, the only reason I say that is one of the Rockwell, our main supplier, they do a lot of posts which are clearly not theirs, but as in them as an individual, but it looks like it's coming from them, but it's not. It's coming.
I think one of the issues we had as well is we're, from talking to the marketing team and the HR team, we're guided by what Sonopar want us to post as well in terms of the design. So we could obviously copy that design onto our own personal ones, or we could have our own way of doing it, our own design of doing it. So again, something else to look at going forward.
Yeah, it's just individual. It's just interesting that Rockwell don't post from their account. They get their leadership or managers or team members to post what is clearly a company message on their LinkedIn account, as if it's coming from them.
So you say it's a company message. Do you feel that has too corporate a feel? What's your thoughts on?
I don't particularly engage with them.
Okay.
It's not.
I know in our early conversations we were conscious of ensuring that the individual account maintained a sense of individuality to it, rather than becoming a faux account for a corporate kind of thing.
I think it's having the choice as well. Like if you're the individual, you're sort of sharing a post that maybe you would want to have sort of on your page.
I think particularly their senior leadership, that's where you tend to see that. So anybody from country level up tends to have those posts coming out. The European president sends something out which is very, very corporate. It's not. There's no way that she's sat there and gone, I'm going to write this post. It's going to look like this. It's clearly a company post. And actually, I think they have theirs managed by a marketing team anyway.
And I think the interesting thing on that is if there's not a strong call to action to say, come and follow Rockwell, then actually what's the benefit anyway? So definitely, if you do try that in the future, I'd encourage you to include that call to action. So it's not just liking Dave's post, but it's actually then going on and following the deeper. Yeah.
But at the same point, they can be quite, I don't know whether that would work negatively.
I think it's finding that fine balance, isn't it? There's a fine line between being too professional and being too...
Yeah, I think they're almost got to be more personalised. I mean, but then I don't know whether, going off a bit of a tangent, I know, but I don't know whether if Oliver or Brad, you would send out something that was specific to your job, as in, the PLC 5 throwback thing, that would be connected to you as an individual because of the job that you're doing.
I think
specific on that. I mean, I'll quite honestly say I'm very selfish on what I like and share within my job description. What interests me, there are some things where both me and Brad cross over, shall we say, but then I'm pretty sure that Brad's not going to be interested in the 141C buzzbar system that come out
So
of
not
the
yours,
so,
isn't it?
some really interesting thoughts there.
Doesn't have an equivalent.
Because it does come down to how you engage with the post. Because, let's say I saw one, Oliver's basket, it might just get a like rather than a share. But then something in the automation basket wouldn't just get a share, but it would get a bit of blurb from me to add to that post, have a call to action, get in touch with me if you need to discuss this product or this migration opportunity, etc., etc. So, really interesting thoughts there.
It's a crossover, isn't it? Because their personal LinkedIn account is yours. It's not Rutico's. It's your account, which you take with you when you go. But obviously, at the time that you're at the company, you are absolutely linked. You are seen as the representative of the company. You're not seen as an individual.
Mm.
That's the kind of funny dynamic there, isn't it? It's not a personal thing. But it is. You take it with you when you go.
So you've got to be careful with the data as well, because I trialled something myself after the charity day at Manchester, and I posted that as a personal post. It got a lot more reactions, a lot more likes, but it weren't the right audience. It was very much my network, my peers. It weren't the right audience, but it got a lot more reactions. So if you just analyse the data, it comes across as if it's amazing, but like you say, the actual contact that you reached out to.
I was also quite conscious as well of sharing for sharing's sake. Like you say, LinkedIn is your own profile. So if you're just constantly sharing everything and it doesn't relate to what your industry or what your specialities are, it's kind of, you lose that connection.
Sorry.
So now we'll just move on to that the final slide for the engagement analysis, where we're looking at the new followers, the number of new followers. And here it's following a very similar path to what we saw with Rutico, where sort of here as the pilot sort of starting, we're seeing a very consistent sort of increase in the number of new followers. And then again, towards the end, it's sort of a tail off again. Similar sort of thing, you can't obviously take too much with that, there could have been other factors, but I think it really shows having the consistent posting and obviously the increased engagement is sort of making more people sort of find the page and want to follow.
Can I ask a question on this? Because obviously there are LinkedIn posts that go out regularly on a weekly basis in relation to people and well-being, and also product posts and all the rest of it. So I'm just interested in how that sort of tailed off towards the end, after the end of your pilot. Is it specifically because of the 2 days that you're doing this and there was a theme around it, or what's the reasoning behind that tail off when we know that there are still posts that are going out regularly?
So I think one part could be just having obviously sort of what you call like the 7 well-being is sort of that consistent going up as well as the other posts, and I think you could also say it's just having the certain days where it's gone up, and even just the encouragement of sort of sharing the posts. So I'm not sure whether the posts that got at the moment actually are encouraged to be shared as much as maybe it was with.
I think another factor of it is that the posts that we decided to share ultimately were our decision. It was our idea and what that content was, and what our Throwback Thursday wanted to be, what our wellbeing post wanted to be. Whereas from the marketing side of things, they're very much rigid posts. It's paid for by the vendor sometimes, or it's very much detailed in how it's done. So I think the posts that got the interaction are the ones that we wanted to post and we wanted to see. So they're being a bit more personable to our audience.
I think also the Feel Good Fridays were more towards mental health, which is a massive thing at the moment due to COVID. So we really jumped on that just to promote, obviously, Mayflex and Rutico are doing something about it, trying to highlight that we are trying to look after our staff, how we're going to do that. I think with the people posts as well, it just doesn't just putting up a post saying, oh, we're all about mental health, but having pictures with mental health champions. I think that's more relatable to staff, to obviously your customers as well, seeing that their suppliers are looking after their staff, and so I think it helps reach a lot more people because it's a main concern right now. So I think that's also why you saw a peak and then maybe a drop off at the end. But I think it's that theme that we're surrounding ourselves with, being aware of mental health. I think that just helped drive that follows a little bit. Thank you.
So now I'm going to pass on to Ian, who's going to discuss about some of the followers.
Thank you. So this is kind of going back to your point you made earlier on, Dave, around the type of people that we're engaging with. What we wanted to show here is a handful of contacts that have followed Retico and Mayflex during the period of our trial. But one thing that I really want to bring your attention to is the title of the people that are following. So what this shows us is it's at multiple levels. With myself being a customer-facing role, I know that's one of the most important things, building a relationship across the business, and not just having one person within the business to have that relationship with. What it also does show you is that we've got people right on the shop floor. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you've got a PLC software engineer who's on the shop floor day in, day out, programming PLCs, doesn't really have any direction of where the company's going. He goes to work, he does his job, and he goes home. Then you've also got people like company director on the bottom left there, where regardless of position, he's reaching out across the board and he's getting engagement. Now that doesn't mean that every person on there followed every post or liked or commented. What it does show you is the breadth and depth that we can reach out to as a company when we're posting these posts on social media. Another bit behind that as well is the buy-in level. So although we may have, for example, a project coordinator, second from bottom on the left-hand side, doesn't mean that they necessarily get the sign-off when it comes to projects or the influence. They all play different roles within the business, whether they be a coach or a decision maker. We're all familiar with them sort of buzzwords and them terms. What it does show is that the true reach that we do have is from top to bottom, left to right, and we cover all levels of people within business. It's not just directors, it's not just engineers on the shop floor, it's across the whole lot, which is something that I think we can be really proud of as well, that we've had these engagements, these are new followers, these are building up on relationships, and also that gives us access to their networks as well. So that's something to be very conscious of as well. And that's just what we wanted to cover on who we've got. I won't go through the names, you can all read the tag names, and they're just names on the board to yourself anyway, you might not be aware of who they are.
Just to add to that as well, it's all about the content that we're producing and what we're putting on LinkedIn and the other social platforms, where we're touching all those different job types and job roles. Some of the posts that, not just in the TDP presentation, but also outside of the two other pages, we're targeting certain audiences. So, for example, we look at a Mayflex side of things from the camera side, and the camera spraying, that might target a project manager and a storesman, whereas the actual pre-build side of it might target the engineers and the managing director from a cost-saving side of things. So really the data that we're producing on our post is targeting all different levels, engaging with everyone that is needing to see the different styles.
How much time did you spend on thinking about what content you wanted to put out there?
So it was mainly on the Friday morning calls. As a team, we discussed what we felt was best for that week or for the weeks going forward. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks in advance we looked at. Again, it was very much a team decision, not specifying it to Retico or to Mayflex, but to make sure we covered both companies.
Did you get any external feedback on what content people that you knew in your circle?
So from myself, no, it was mainly around with Harry and the individuals we had, because in the TDP we've got individuals from each different part of the businesses, but it's something that we potentially should have looked at, yeah.
There was an end of phase 1 meeting with yourself, wasn't there, Harriet? And I think there was a lot of email correspondence through December and into January, so there was some liaison there.
Yeah, I think the team's done a really good job actually, because as we've moved into a new way of working with Andy and the marketing team, we had the existing plan, the new multi-channel campaign plans that Andy was driving, and then this pilot. So actually I think the mix of content's been quite timely, and that we've had a lot of different types of posts going out. And as you can see, the team can now kind of show which ones are more popular. I do agree with Dave's point though, that, and I think I've said it all along, you do need to be careful about that internal versus external, and those Feel Good Friday posts typically have been more internally shared and liked, which is great because it shows morale, but tying it back to the business purpose perhaps is something to look at more in the future. But yeah, I do think the team's done a really good job of balancing through a lot of change and a lot of different plans coming at them.
Certainly been unsettled the year that we've had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll leave that space. And then finally, we'll pass over to the third phase. We'll go through the recommendations that we got in phase 2. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, do you mind if we turn the air conditioning off? Is that right?
She got in the car.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really well.
So for us, based on the information and data that we've taken from the first 2 phases, these are our recommendations for the social media strategy to continue on. For us, it's the consistent posting. It's got to be agreed company-wide, as already spoken upon between, I think, Brad and Daisy, that during our pilot, when we were posting a little bit more consistently, we did start to see some increased followers and engagement, and then at the end of that, it did dip off a little bit. We want to also utilise it or have a central resource for it by utilising the digital marketing team, because if there's any email campaign that's maybe went out, there's a good opportunity to link that into a post, because you wouldn't see it any other way. I think this topic, you've spoken this a lot, we did spend, I think we created a 3-month social media calendar at the start of phase of the pilot, so we all broke into teams and we all went away, and we all planned that week in advance, and we looked at topics that were potentially going to be trending that maybe was relevant to one of us. We also want to create, or we believe, creating some focus groups across the businesses, utilising people from different departments, bringing them together, holding either monthly or bi-monthly meetings to plan the post, but also to look back at the previous month or 2 months post and take the information around new followers or engagements that we've got from them. For us, if we
about customers in focus group.
Well, we would probably say internally, Ian, just from the departments that we've got. I'm not 100% sure we would potentially get a customer buy-in for that. If we were looking to create it and hold monthly and bi-monthly, I think we tried, or I know it's personally, we've reached out to a customer in Scotland to look at something, and they've come back and said that they don't have time because it's not relevant to them, which is, don't get me wrong, it's just a small business for them, but they did say they would love to do it, but they don't have time to commit to us to do that. For us within the focus groups, then we believe there would need to be some training and guidance to make sure that we're doing things correctly, because we would want to make sure that the tone or the voice of the tone posts are consistent and are identifiable for ourselves. Uniformity across opcos to make sure that we're all doing the same thing. The Canva training would be fantastic, as it would allow some templates to be utilised so that both companies are keeping it in line with the Sonopar guidelines and the consistency of post. I believe one of the feedbacks we got during one of the phases was more an ad hoc video from off the phone. Certainly in Scotland we do a lot of on-site training, and I think it would be fantastic just to have a do's and don'ts of what we could potentially use coming off the phone. We take a lot of training out to customers, or they come to our office in Scotland, and again it's even the office tours to meet the team. I'll now pass you what is in.
Awesome, thanks Tony. I'm very conscious that you've all taken in a lot of information, so I'm going to ask everyone in this room just to stand up for a second. That's okay? So what I want everyone to do is everyone just close their eyes for a couple of seconds. Everyone take a deep breath in and out. I can sit down again. And now this TDP group of 2021, 2022 can say they knocked the audience off their feet. Roger? Cool. So moving on to social media workshops. The main sort of recommendation of this was to, one, help boost the Sonopar 360 training platform. Reason for this is we've all been guinea pigs in this course to this sort of platform. We've seen how good it is. We've seen what sort of capabilities it has, so why not spread that across the business? It makes sense, so once you've tested something and you've seen the capabilities within that, move it on to the rest of the business and show them the actual good use of it. The second thing is, and I know you'll all appreciate this is a lot harder, but it's to mandate attendance across various teams. So within this room at the moment, we've got people representing sales, we've got people representing HR, finance and marketing as well, which is myself. So if we have people from each area of the business, we can bring in different areas of expertise to sort of bring that information together. And what that would lead on to is we really need to look to kickstart a cultural change within both OpCos. So we really need to make people understand why social media works for us, what benefits it brings, and why it works for different functions as well. I'll go back to what Brad said about a 100% increase in terms of Ratico's numbers for the test. I'll go back to what Daisy said, a 400% increase in numbers for Mayflex test. They're not small numbers, and they are numbers we need to shout about, we need to be proud about as well. So moving on, please, the next slide. So unfortunately, one thing we do want to recommend is we want to rerun the pilot for the reason of the Ukraine crisis. We're all aware of what's happening in Ukraine, or what was obviously happening, and the impact that had from Sonnebar coming down. So we were quite restricted that we had 7 posts planned for Feel Good Fridays. We wanted to talk about mental health in a real sort of lot of detail. We didn't get the chance to. Only 3 posts went out for that. What we found from the 3 posts were they brought sort of great sort of reactions and engagement from our audience. So we want to try bring that across again and sort of make it consistent messaging, help boost those numbers as well. And then from that, what we can look to do is we can look to continue serialized posts and look on different popular hashtags sort of around LinkedIn and Twitter and other platforms. Next slide, please, John. And then lastly, what we want to do is we want to look and recommend that sourcing a dedicated social media specialist. And Andy's just nodded his head there. I saw that from the corner of my eye. But if you don't know, I'm part of Andy's team. I'm part of the digital marketing team. And I know how important this is. I know how, as the other team does, I know how important this project's been, how much time and effort we've all put into this. So why not bring someone on board that could tie all of this together? We all know it's a full-time job. We all know it's going to take a lot of time. And you need someone consistently thinking about the ideas and trends to bring on board. Because there might be budget issues at the moment, we could look to bring on an agency at first to make sure that sort of the strategy is put in place. But then further down the line, there's no reason why we shouldn't look to bring in a dedicated person to tie together social media calendars, and more importantly, tie together different sort of departments of the business that will bring everything together. And then next slide, please, John. So just to wrap up, you know what, I've actually never uploaded a YouTube video, so I don't think I'm a social media specialist at this point. But just to tie up, the recommendations we've sort of decided are consistent social media strategy, offer training and guidance to our sort of employees, social media workshops, rerun the pilot, and Andy's favourite, dedicated social media resource. And now I'll pass on to Jodie, who's going to sort of take us through the teamwork review.
I don't really know how to follow that. I feel like I should ask you to do a roly-poly or something. Well, I mean, I'm not doing one. Maybe Zane will do one for us in his very tight trousers.
Unless someone wants to see what I had for breakfast.
So firstly, we don't know if you did it on purpose, but what you created was a really dynamic and diverse team of people. We've got really outgoing people, we've got super quiet people, we've got marketing specialists, sales people, people who are really technically minded, people who the thought of standing up here today probably made them tremble in their boots at the beginning of this process. So it's really important to us that we all kind of helped each other and found out what everybody wanted to get out of it. So the people that were really scared of presenting, those of us that weren't so bothered took a step back and said, well, you guys present this. The people that wanted to learn more about certain things, we made sure we kind of encouraged one another and tried to make sure everybody was excelling and learning the most from the experience. So we've done weekly catch-ups every week at 10 a.m. Some of us obviously haven't made it, but there's always been someone on that call. End of phase in-person meetings, either here or at Ratico. As I said, we discussed where people want to improve. The people that really wanted to improve on presenting are the people that have presented earlier in the process. Kept in really regular contact. We chat on Teams chat. We've got a WhatsApp group. We've tried to be really conscious that we share the workload throughout the project. You've got some very, very talented people who can run away with a presentation and come back with this beautiful presentation, and some of us that are a little bit less skilled. So we've tried to learn from one another and make sure that everybody's pulling their weight. We have had to do a lot on Teams because of the new normal, COVID. Some of the training courses, some of the group meetings have all been over Teams, where we would have probably preferred to be together. But we have adapted really well. We've all made sure we've had our cameras on, been engaged, been giving it 100%, and just communicating with other parts of the business as well. So it hasn't only been about the 12 people on the course, it's been about calling Harriet, speaking to Andy. Poor Caroline has to speak to us all the time. And various other people. I know we've had to involve our marketing team, Retico's marketing team, HR. So just making sure that we're engaging with the whole business, and the TDP has not just been about these 12 people, it's been about the whole of Retico and Mayflex. So that's how we've worked as a team. Thank you all for listening. Obviously, we're very open to questions. Maybe not you, Dave. You've asked enough. But yeah, we are ready to answer any questions.
Oh, well done.
Any questions?
Well, I've got a question in terms of the project, in terms of the fact that it was 2 operating companies. So what kind of challenges did that give you in terms of running the project and the different phases?
I think ultimately with the new norming teams, that added an ease to it, being able to all connect at the same time weekly. But also I think that was a disadvantage as well, because it didn't allow us all to put our thoughts and our kind of our points across as well as they could be. But overall, I think it was very much a mixed project. I think if you ask all of us individually, did we input enough or did we have our say-so? I think the answer would be yeah.
In terms of like the different strategies, I think that's what more I meant, as opposed to you guys working together as a team. In terms of, you know, what Mayflex might want as opposed to Retico in relation to...
I think ultimately the end goal was the same, was to increase engagement, you know, but make sure that engagement was with the right people. So that came down to, for Mayflex, it was more a customer-led, and I think it was very similar to Retico. So I think overall it was very lined up and a joint process.
And we were really fortunate because we did have marketing from both companies. So Bex knew what we wanted, Zane knew what Retico wanted. I think without them, honestly, we probably would have struggled a little bit without them. It would have been much more difficult, but then we would have just had to engage further with the marketing team, which I think we'd have done.
But also what Jodie mentioned earlier, you had different people from each business in different departments. So we were able to bounce ideas off of sales, off of marketing, off of each technical side of things as well. So it's quite interesting to, for example, Tony's way of doing something might be different to my way of doing something, but looking at it from a 360, I can take some of Tony's attributes and do it into my day-to-day. So it's quite interesting.
Good.
The proposal regarding having a social media specialist, have you a financial justification for that?
You guys can answer as well. I don't know.
We've been chipping in between us.
Yeah, this is the conundrum that Harry has and will continue to have in her life.
You ultimately need to see return on investment, ultimately.
Yes.
But how do you engage that if you haven't done it?
Exactly.
I can answer that as well. I think if you look at, obviously I can answer it, but if you look at the digital marketing team as a whole, if you want a well-rounded digital communication strategy, you need expert in different areas. So we've got obviously Roger, who's creative marketing specialist, Leah, who specialises in content, you've got Pav, who specialises in graphics, and the email marketing specialist. It makes sense to have someone who focuses on that channel of social media. If we've got channels that are lagging behind, let's build on them and sort of build the strategy at the same time.
I guess the question is really getting at though is if we didn't do it, and I'm not suggesting we should or shouldn't at this point. If we didn't do it, what's the negative? Or if we did it, what's the benefit? If it was your business and you earned £100 a week and you've got to spend £10 to put someone in to do this, now you've got £90 a week, you've not got 100. Is this going to get you the £10 plus a return? Or is it just going to make you feel good? And I think that's the point, because you can do lots of things that make you feel good, but don't make you any money. Yeah. And I think the question, this is the pivotal question on this whole social media thing is it good value? Does it make your staff feel good? It probably does, because they've engaged well, so that's positive. You know, does it give you value? Or you could argue, but they might not leave.
To spin it back onto you guys, what are your thoughts on as the seniors in the room, are you invested in spending money to do this, or are your concerns that it's not going to bring ROI?
I think we need to stop, because we need to have the conversation in order to be able to feed back to you guys. So,
can I just ask a question about if you had more time to have done this, what would you spend more time on any particular bits?
I think it might have been on the actual consistent monitoring of all the posts afterwards. We mentioned that the last few posts, maybe from our results, didn't have the same level of engagement because we had to put it off at a certain point. So it's been able to have someone's content each week for the same sort of period, and you can get proper comparison with that, and then also engage with other companies' posts or comment. I think Harriet mentioned earlier about opening up conversations with people on social media platforms, and I think obviously us lot doesn't have the time to sort of do that ourselves.
No. I mean, I think the research on the other companies, it's the first time I've seen anything like that on a single piece.
I think the competition piece would be good to add to your list of actions to carry on with, because that's interesting to really dig into that and understand why we think their engagement levels.
Yeah.
So
did you do any research on the content of the competitors?
Yeah.
That type of thing.
So there's 2 or 3 from a Mayflex side of things where their content was very friendly, jokey, laughing, not very much product placement. It was more about what they're doing as individuals in the business, and a bit of a joke factor to it, which seemed to do well.
Yeah.
But actually, if you drilled into those customers that liked those posts and commented on those posts, are they the customers that Mayflex want to align themselves with? Are they?
Balance to that kind of
So it's are you going to be less professional but win more business, or are you going to potentially make yourself look a bit stupid?
The DPS is the one, obviously, that's scored high. I wouldn't say it's unprofessional, their content. I would just say it's got more personality. There's more videos, there's more, your suggestion at the end is that we become a bit more corporate, set some rules, have a standard, follow it. Everyone does the same. TVS is the opposite to that. You've got the guy with his iPhone walking around the demo room showing the product, and they're getting 127%.
The DVS posts that get the most interaction are the wraps. They do a lot of they do silly wraps where they do a Christmas wrap, they did an IFSEC wrap, they did a security event wrap, and they do these silly wraps, and they're funny. I laugh at them. I share them with people, not through LinkedIn because I don't want to give them shares.
But it's misleading then if we're saying that, if that's the target because their engagement is 127. But in the detail here, it actually says only 4 engagement average per post. So we need to understand where, and do we discount their high engagement on wraps of Christmas?
And if you actually drill down into the wraps and things, I mean, I'll have a look later, but when I drilled down into the wraps, because obviously they're my main competition, it's loads of DVS staff like them, and DVS have a lot of internal salespeople. I think they've got about 16 internal salespeople. Every single post they like, every single post they share. So a lot of it is trying to pull that out, because that's what we're saying.
I think maybe on the competition we need to drill down and really understand the context.
I think there's a fine line between what's too much and what's too little, what's too corporate, what's too social.
But that is something we would have done if we'd had more time. We'd have sort of broken that down, pulled out employee engagement, because if 16 people from DVS like it, do we actually, does it matter to us?
I think with more time, the detail would have been much finer.
Yeah, and the content's so pivotal, isn't it? And having that balance of content, that the producty piece. There's no surprise that you have a low score on that, because everybody does it. It's the easiest thing to do. Whereas the other stuff that's, like the wellness, maybe other topics about personal development, the kind of growth mindset, as well as business, are very kind of in the moment topics that you can get people following you for not a particularly business reason, but then you can build that kind of following group and culture that creates a brand, let's say a social media brand. So.
I think there's a really interesting correlation between the 2 questions around competitors and do we want to invest in a social media person, because actually with 5,000, 10,000 followers, with all due respect, even at a high engagement rate, the number of people seeing and engaging with the posts is relatively low. If you equate it to an old-fashioned marketing approach where you're paying for magazine circulation, for example, some of those competitors with social media teams, and they've got 100,000 followers, they see that as an investment on advertising. So they're saying, well, every post we post, because we've got 100,000 people seeing it and then potentially sharing it, they kind of write off the cost of a social media head, because that's what you would have spent on a magazine circulating 100,000. I think the big question is, how do you increase the followers to get it to a point where there is a value and a return for having a dedicated head? And the reality is, at the moment, kind of at the beginning of that journey. So I would really encourage you not just to look at engagement rates, but also numbers of impressions. So how many people are seeing your advertising? And also the number of engagements, because even if you've got a really high engagement rate, until you get those followers 50, 60, 70,000 plus, the net number of people seeing your message is not going to really justify a full-time head. So it's really chicken and egg, because that full-time head arguably could work on your follower reach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think adding to each of those questions as well, it is a journey, isn't it? I think this phase is really about building the engagement. The next phase is going to be how you monetize that engagement and the business.
And it's a moving feast, isn't it, with social media? It's you might get it right for today, but there's other people in a room somewhere else that are thinking about, okay, how do we differentiate ourselves? And you've got to have this agility to keep re-looking, keep reinventing, kind of.
Just look at it in our professional format next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
You don't know until something else comes out.
Yeah, you
It's
don't know.
the likes of WhatsApp is dying to the likes of Signal because of the terms and conditions. How things change and adapting to it.
It's then taking into consideration as well the challenge that you have around organic versus paid. So a lot of the people that you're competing with are paying for output and gaining reach through investment. Excuse me. So you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples, I suppose. My question is whether you guys feel that it would be worth keeping a cross-functional, cross-OpCo stakeholder group for social. Anyone from this team that wanted to kind of continue and stay as part of a centralised group to generate ideas, to come up with thoughts around social, to work cross-functionally. Would that be something that we should look at continuing, or would you all just want to go your separate ways?
I definitely think it's worthwhile. I don't know if I think having the two groups working together has worked well, and whether or not the statistics are in line with the fact that we were posting every week, we'll never know really. But actually, just the back and forth, the communication, the bouncing ideas off each other and tweaking things to something that appeals to a wider market than just someone sitting in marketing. Because ultimately, yes, they're brilliant with their jobs, but that's one mindset. Whereas having that stakeholder group of 5, 10, 12 people, however many it is, and getting all them different opinions has been really beneficial. So I think it would be worth having a cross-OpCo group, definitely.
I definitely agree with that as well. I mean, the whole thing about social media is it's a social platform, so it's not just one person sat there thinking this is exactly what we need to be saying and I'm 100% right. It is all about people interacting with one another and sort of putting all their minds together to put a post out there that isn't just about what I think, it might be about what Julia and Nikki think as well, and that kind of then appeals to more people and encourages that engagement rate.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think if you did something like that, I think you'd always have a marketing presence in there, just because, you know, within social media, the algorithms change all the time. So let's say you have that marketing central resource in there that's tracking the algorithms and the trends on the platform. You then bring in sales, HR, finance to bring in the other elements of posting and what sort of needs to go out there as well from their perspective.
I think the other thing with social media is it's maybe not just the dimension of selling more kit, but retaining your staff and your teams. And somebody that might be looking to join might be looking at social media posts of the organisations in this room to see what kind of culture they're getting into. So that's one of the measurements.
The ones that we did notice as well, and obviously I noticed it more on the Retico side from doing the recruitment, but during the first part of the Field of Friday ones, where we were doing things like career and the mental health charter in particular, we had a lot of recruitment going on, and some of the likes and shares and comments that we had on there were from either previous employees who'd left and were saying, this is great that Rutica are still doing this and how much they care about their employees. And actually there was quite a few likes from candidates who were going through the recruitment process at that point, so they were obviously checking what was on our social media. So I think that was really good in terms of the timing for that. And I think it kind of echoes with saying that we should have a cross-functional group, because then you would be able to look at all aspects of different areas of business at the same time. So if we know that we've got...
It's almost a bit of a pulse on the business overall.
Yeah. We might have some kind of areas where we want to do a whole load of things that might support around recruitment, and we can do some things that support around if finance are doing a subject at that point as well. So just having all of those different inputs, I think, is really beneficial to everybody.
I think it goes back to those 4 pillars as well, the whole sharing, learning, interaction and marketing. So it's not just a platform for pushing product out there, it's also about interacting with people that want to engage with us and trying to encourage new people to engage with us as well. And just using it as a platform to learn and develop as a business and demonstrate that we're an organisation that both knows our stuff and cares about the people that we currently employ and want to employ. And just kind of needs to cover all bases, really.
I think the overarching thing for myself would be it's okay getting an individual to drive the social media strategy, but it needs to be adopted by the business. Because if one person doing all that work is not amplified, it's not going to amplify. I refer back to my old employer, B&R. They didn't force you to reshare posts and like and comment, but if you didn't, you were named and shamed on regular. Now I know that's a bit sort of tongue-in-cheek, you can't force that, but the company adopted it, and the social media hits we've got, and the reactions, and when we put on events like with Tico Live, the engagement in that was fantastic. I'm not saying that you need to name and shame people to get a reaction, but it's amplified throughout the business, not just one individual on one account.
Right, we need to stop the questions now. Otherwise we're going to be here all day and we're not actually going to hear from you on an individual basis. So if you guys are okay, if you want to go to the breakout area and sort of chill out for a bit whilst we discuss, critique your presentation.
Done, everyone.
Your analysis of the feedback from the different posts and what type of post it was almost after you, it didn't feel as if there was a stage of strategic discussion about what type of content you were going to drive and analyse. So, I mean, I've just written down here 4 or 5 things. If you were to have a debate about what type of content, maybe you'd want to say, okay, well, the content we need needs to differentiate from other people. What are other people doing? What Andrew talked about DBS. So the differentiation piece is a big challenge in social media because there's a lot of people that are doing the same thing. A serious post, like people need to know that we're a serious business. Fun posts, the mix of, these kind of discussions about, is it serious, is it fun, is it technical, is there some around people, and then that drives your content. And we didn't get the feeling that you'd actually have that stage of discussion about the structure of the output of the content you wanted to create.
I think it would have been good in the part of your trial to have been able to identify this kind of post or these kind of posts get this, these kind of posts get this. What you did is you went through a couple of things, which is probably similar to what we would have done before. So you then weren't able to be able to put up and say, we'd have done something fun and silly, or a unwrap video, whatever the terminology was. That actually the engagement soars and it does this or it goes down, and I think that would have been good because that's part of the strategy is lead with this, do this, but lead with this because this is where you're going to get more engagement and things like that.
The ROI piece is an interesting space, and I intimated we've had some very interesting discussions with Harriet over her tenure here about how increasing investment in this space gets a return, and it is really difficult. So, but I think it needed to be addressed somehow, even if it just said it's bloody difficult on a slide. At least we thought you thought about it, and I think there are so many. If you looked at the measurements and thought, okay, well, there's a raw sales thing, which is difficult to kind of connect back to social media. There's a number of engagement measurements. There might be something around people, to the discussion around people retention and stuff like that. All of these things are things that Harriet has fed back to the board about the number of data points. There's not one data point that says if you have a great social media strategy, you'll see it tick up in this data point. It's a number of them. Having a bit of a think about that is quite a big deal. You had some comments about targeting and new followers.
Yeah, we were just talking about if one of the objectives is to increase the number of followers, which could be a measure that is an ROI, we could target every quarter what we want to do. And you showed some improvement in followers, new followers. Is how do we target new followers? So we talked about potentially from a maintenance point of view, there might be interest groups online for the Internet of Things or smart buildings, maybe for industrial things, smart factories, whatever. And could we target them or start to comment? The point you made, Daisy, about commenting in conversations that are happening linked to a post, is do we engage some of our colleagues in looking at those posts, getting involved in the discussion? Would that get us more visibility from the thought leadership or market position? And also, it's that sort of external data, but then the internal data we've got, if we did some comparisons between number of contacts in our CRM systems, the number of people we send emails to versus the number of followers, and a look up between the lists, would that give us an activity for the marketing or sales teams to say there's 5,000 people over here on the database that don't follow us on LinkedIn for their customers. So how do we get them following us? And we might get engagement increased. And the last piece on data that's available to us is if I've got 2,000 followers as an individual, but only 1,000 of them follow my friends, does that mean my other 1,000 are just friends or not relevant? If they're relevant, how do I get them following my friends? Because that could be some low-hanging fruit to get more followers.
Just on that comment, I guess, Zane, I don't know how many followers you've got on LinkedIn. 1,000?
No, not that popular.
But Andrew, I've got 1,500. It's just people that you accumulate over the time that you've been around. But you think as an individual to have 1,000 or 1,500, and the company has 5,000. That doesn't seem like a lot when you actually stand back and think about it like that. So I think
stakeholders would be quite interesting to analyse and have a line in the sand, say that 10% are staff or ex-staff, or 5% are competitors, 30% are international, whatever that breakdown is. Because actually I think within the 6,000 or so Mayflex, real target customers is probably quite a small number.
I think that would have been a really important statistic when you talk about all of the measures, how much is staff. Because whilst that has a value, and you've spoken about the value, you really want to be talking as a business plan, or as a strategy, as a project. You want to be talking about out there, not in here. In here's another piece of it. But that felt a little bit like we're kind of missing that. That would have been a really interesting thing, and would probably, I mean, it would have been a bit more work, but it's probably something you could have done through.
But it may help us when we come back to talking about resource and investment. The ROI is I don't think can be sales, because it's just so, it's almost, we'll just be beating ourselves up every week to get a number that makes us feel okay. But you could set some measures that say 6,000 people but only 2,000 customers. We want to get up to a 50% ratio, not a 30%.
I think this is the balance that sharing our challenges from a the leadership point of view is around the financial justification for increasing resources in this space versus our customers' engagement and the different kind of demographics in our customer base. And I can speak for the Retico side, and we've got customers that will only want to pick up an old catalogue. So social media for that, and it's important to them, and they're not particularly interested in going online to find out about how a product works. They want somebody to come and talk to them. I'm sure that Mayflex have probably got the same thing. So you've got to be kind of schizophrenic. On the one side, you've got to speak to the people that are digitally literate, and to the other side, the illiterate, you've got to be a friend to them as well. And the board is going through this schizophrenic phase at the moment, which probably resolve itself over time, where we're evolving through this digital kind of journey, using that well-used phrase, and our budgets are having to be schizophrenic as well, because you can't stop doing some things because you've still got customers there. So that's
and most of the Mayflex board are the oldies and not the catalogues. You've got to learn this as well. So.
What I've just said to you is therapy for me, by the way. It's kind of, but is there any other comments on?
Yeah, I'll just throw in, I'm sure as you did in your presentation training, it's the people that sit in this side are only going to take a little bit of what you actually say. So it's what you want to leave them with. And if I was being super critical, I'd say there was a slide in there, there was the competition bit, what they were doing, made me think, okay, well they're doing it, we kind of need to be doing it. But then you put a slide up about saying, well, social media is like fire and cars, you've got to do it. And then you just said, well, that's the business case. So you've got to do it. But there wasn't really anything that said, you didn't say why. You just said, it's like these are the two things and you're an idiot if you don't do it. And now you need a specialist. So the summary, I could sum up your whole presentation with, there's a bit of data, you've got to do this or you're an idiot. And if you do it, you've got to put a specialist in. That would be that's what I'll take away. I mean, obviously there's a lot more stuff in there. But that would be what my takeaway is. So I think if it was now, I'm not saying I'm not wanting to do this, but if this was something that I wasn't connected to at all, or wasn't minded one way or the other, I'm not sure you would have stuck me into the thing to say, actually, we really want to do this, I'm now excited about it. And the other thing I'd say is this, whilst it's good to have, it was a bit scrappy in terms of linking it to your slides, because I think one of the slides was, I don't know, the one about the competition.
Yeah.
It was on page 9, and that was your first or second slide in, and I was thinking, where am I on here? So this would be good to take away, but in terms of linking it to tell the story, and that's the thing when you do these things, you want to have a story where you start, you kind of take someone on the journey, and you end with a good place to go, yeah, I feel good about this.
I think one of the things I'll just share is the discipline that we have with Sonopar headquarters about our board meetings with them, because we have to send them a week in advance our slide deck, so they know what we're going to say in terms of paper a week in advance, and they all come in on their PC and they're making notes, or they've got their printout, and it makes for much more structured, better questioning as a result of them having that. I'm not necessarily saying in advance, but I think you shouldn't be afraid if you're ever in this situation again. You shouldn't be afraid about putting it out there in advance of a meeting, because you'll get a much better, interaction, structured interaction. So, I would, there's no other comments. I would say it was a fantastic job. I'm very proud of the group. It's a talent development program, and you're all very talented. So you did an excellent job. And I know we've thrown some things at you there. But it's a learning curve and constructive criticism, and probably because we've been through some deliberations ourselves. Harriet's got the scars on the back to prove it. That we're probably coming out of our box, out of the corner with our boxing gloves on this, because it's very topical for us.
And we'll in the future, so you give us a lot to think about.
Yeah, so well done
as well. So, yeah.
What I'd say in relation to the feedback piece that we're putting in, this is the first time that we've given feedback on the presentation, and it was something that the group last year commented on, because they presented and we went, oh, well done, thank you, everybody, and then they went away. And then it was like, well, what about the feedback? How did we do? Was it good? Have you taken some of the key actions? Are you going to do anything? And we were like, oh, well, it's just, and then sort of said we put a load of time and effort into this presentation and our business project, and you've listened, which is great, but are you going to take anything from it? So this time round, we kind of thought, well, this is what we want to do. We want to be able to give you some feedback so you can take something away from it. So you don't think, well, okay, that was great. We've spent like a good part of half a year, 8 months doing this, and we've presented for an hour, and now I'm walking away and I don't really know what's going to happen, or if we're going to take anything from it. So you might feel, and I don't want anyone to feel, because I think some of the comments that you said, not everything has been massively positive, but overall it's been a really good presentation. Yeah. So it's kind of trying to balance. We can't just go, everything was super brilliant and you've done a fantastic. You have, but there are obviously going to be pieces of the presentation that need to be back on. So
yeah, you're in the program because you want to grow yourself. That's what you signed up to, and having that mindset is fantastic. So
After the feedback's been good. Yeah, speaking agree.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't take any.
I mean, not the.
Yes, I wouldn't take any of this. Obviously, that was all good. But I wouldn't take any of this as a negative, because actually we can only make those comments because you've given us the information. Yeah. Without that, we've got nothing to.
I think we'll be interested
to question and build on.
Yeah. To have this presentation, and then I was another 6 months to come back and represent.
I think what it actually does to Claire's point about what comes next is it's given us a really good opportunity to form. It's given me some good food for thought about forming a stakeholder group within across both opcos and across functions to really allow us to kind of delve into those different topic areas which all of you guys have talked about.
I think the content's the big challenge is how do you differentiate? And I think it's not going to come from 1 or 2 people. You need strength in numbers.
So well done, everybody.
Yeah, right.
And,
yeah, congratulations.
We'll now it's over to Ian to present the awards.